As we start this module, I feel like I can hear groaning coming from the class, wondering why we need to study the history of our profession. The simple answer is that we cannot understand the present or look to the future without first examining our past. As your textbook points out, early civilizations needed their populations to develop utilitarian skills in order to simply survive. However, as civilizations progressed, we started to see sport emerge as an element in itself. The Greeks valued physical ability and laid the foundation for future sport programs. European cultures engaged in military training to help stabilize social conditions. The gymnastics of old stressed nationalistic goals, and in England we saw sport and games offered as an alternative to the former gymnastic formats. You can read through the textbook to get an understanding of the nature of the early cultures. We are going to focus our attention in this lecture on the Greek heritage and its role in developing sport. Remember that Greece is regarded as the birthplace of Western civilization. It has produced a rich heritage of art, philosophy, drama, history, and many other important contributions to civilization. Of interest to us is in the Greek history where we see the first recorded athletic events. The Greek society evolved from four distinct eras: the Homeric era, the totalitarian city-state of Sparta, the early Athenian era, and the late Athenian era. So let's start our discussion with the Homeric Greeks. I'm sure you've all heard of the great Greek poet Homer. Homer is the legendary author of the Iliad and the Odyssey. These writings include the earliest records of athletic competitions. To help us better understand how these ancient epic poems can help us understand the earliest beginnings of our profession, we need to take a crash course review in one of these writings. If any of you have watched the movie Troy, you might remember the character of Patroclus. Patroclus was Achilles' best friend. Achilles was played by Brad Pitt, and Patroclus was killed in the Trojan War. Do any of you remember the scene where Achilles learns of his friend's death? The Iliad describes the funeral games created in his honor. The contest included a chariot race, boxing, wrestling, a foot race, a duel with spears, a discus throw, archery, and a javelin throw. And it's literature like this where we see sport emerge as a competition. Let's take the time to watch a short video that will give us an understanding of how Book 23 of the Iliad has influenced the beginning of athletic competition.
In Book 23 of the Iliad, Achilles and his army return to the Achaean camp. They mourn Patroclus, and Achilles vents his anger by abusing Hector's corpse. He vows he will not wash Hector's blood off his body until he has buried Patroclus. Later, Achilles falls asleep on the beach. Patroclus' spirit visits him in a dream, asking why he has forgotten him. His spirit cannot enter the land of the dead until his body has been burned. Patroclus asks that their bones be interred in the same jar when Achilles dies. Achilles reaches out to Patroclus, but he slips away like smoke. The next day, the Achaeans build a pyre for Patroclus. His body is surrounded with slain animals, enemies, and other goods. Achilles cuts a lock of hair he's been growing out and burns it with Patroclus. He vows that dogs will eat Hector's body. Aphrodite and Apollo keep it safe from animals and the elements. Achilles gathers the Achaeans for funeral games the following day. Diomedes, with Athena's help, wins the chariot race. Nestor's son, Antilochus, appeases Menelaus by giving up his second-place prize. Odysseus and great Ajax tie in the wrestling match. Odysseus wins the foot race. Warriors compete in a boxing match, a duel, a shot put, and archery contests. Achilles awards Agamemnon first place for the spear throwing contest. Achilles takes his anger against Hector too far, abusing his body and killing captured enemies to burn with Patroclus' body. The appearance of Patroclus' ghost emphasizes the importance of a proper burial. Achilles is denying this of Hector, expressing a feeling of responsibility for Patroclus' death. Cutting the lock of hair he has been growing out symbolizes his choice to die with glory in war rather than return home. Achilles' rage seems to take a back seat to his role as host of the games. He is fair and diplomatic, graciously resolving a dispute about prizes that contains echoes of his own conflict with Agamemnon. These games were a way for fighters to win glory, honor, and prizes in peacetime, and they share many of the attributes of war. The games test many of the same skills used to make war without hurting the participants, and boasting plays a similar role in these contests as in battle.
The predominant philosophy that developed during this era was known as the Greek ideal. This ideal stressed the unity of the man of action and the man of wisdom. This was the all-around man called the arete, and it was believed to be personified by Greek gods, in essence, to strive to achieve your highest potential. The Spartan era occurred from 776 BC to 371 BC. In this era, the Greeks organized themselves into small governing units known as city-states. The two dominating city-states were Sparta and Athens. As the Spartans conquered land and captives, the Greek ideal vanished and was replaced by a strict code of discipline. The agoge was developed. The agoge was an educational system developed to focus on the service to the city-state. In this era, the government controlled everything. This single layer of control stymied creativity and any future development. All newborn children were examined by a council of elders. Those determined to be strong and fit could live, and those not so lucky were left to die. Male children were raised to be soldiers, and female children were raised to bear children. To prepare the girls for their role, they were required to participate in gymnastics, which included wrestling, swimming, and horseback riding. Dancing was also mandated for both sexes as a way to increase their fitness and honor the gods. Male children were sent to the agoge for training. At 7 years of age, young boys were drafted into the Spartan military, where they could remain in service until death. As they began their military training, they would engage in running, jumping, swimming, hunting, wrestling, and other activities. At age 20, boys engaged in vigorous military training. Here they began participating in actual warfare. To better understand the life in this city-state, let's take a look at a short video called The Spartan Life.
Leonidas and the Spartans have waited their entire lives for this moment. For the Spartans are born for battle. Around 530 BC, 50 years before the battle at Thermopylae, Leonidas is a newborn and faces the first challenge of his military life. A Spartan elder examines Leonidas for defects.
At birth, the first act of the state after you were out of your mama's womb was to look at you and say you are fit or you are not fit to live in the society.
This was a hardcore warrior society. You couldn't have anybody that might be a weakling or be a weak link. If a baby had any imperfection at all, they didn't allow him to live.
The child would be, quote, exposed. That is, it was a sacred hillside where the child would be taken and left there to die.
No consideration is given to the feelings of the parents. All that mattered is the benefit of the child to the state.
Only two people in the Spartan state could have a tombstone with their name on it. One, a man who died in battle. The other, a woman who died in childbirth. Because both acts were seen as giving your life for the state. And if you reflect on that for a few moments, childbirth, child-rearing is for the state. Not the family, not the individual, it's for the state.
While strong babies like Leonidas are spared, many in this warrior cult are left to perish. The Spartans believe that these babies would likely not even survive the unique Spartan training program. one which transforms ordinary boys into killing machines. The Greek historian Herodotus writes that at age 7, every Spartan boy, including Leonidas, is taken from his family and placed in military training camps.
The life of a young Spartan boy would strike us as harsh today. Until about age 7, he would be left with his mother mostly. Father would make visits, etc. It would be a kind of a normal boy. At that point, he would be taken into a kind of state system of education. And there they would live a rough military life.
Here, young Leonidas will live, train, and learn to kill.
When a young boy was taken from his mother at age 7 and entered the agoge, the upbringing, he never did anything except train for the next 12 years until he entered the army.
Their education focused on military skills and discipline and toughness. They were often not fed sufficiently, so they'd be hungry all the time. This would encourage them to steal in order to eat. You were taught not to cry. You were taught to conceal pain. The whole society was set up to try and strip you of individual identity.
Another very bizarre ritual that they engaged in to make sure that their guys were tough is that they would be flogged until they bled in groups, and whoever was the toughest and stood the longest was very highly honored. Families would stand around and yell and scream at the boys, "Don't you pass out, don't you pass out." There does seem to be some indication that there was an increasing level of violence as you got older, and of course one suspects that this is aimed.
The hazing and the other aspects of fraternity life go awry.
As the boys get older, the training becomes more and more intense.
Do honor to your family! Do honor to your Spartan heritage! You will get strong, or you will die! Spartan!
By the time Leonidas and the Spartan boys reach their early teens, weapons like wooden swords and tipless spears are added to the military training. Still, during these war games, consequences can be deadly.
Youths were killed in the course of this fight. It's a preparation. You're going to see your comrades and your youth mates being killed.
The art of being a good soldier, the art of being stealthy.
By the time Leonidas is 18, his education is complete. He has survived a Spartan training designed to weed out the weak. He has learned to kill or be killed.
The Spartans were known for their domination in battle and won more Olympic victories than any other city-state. The key here, however, is that although they were excellent soldiers, they were taught to respond to commands and not think for themselves. In the end, they became their own worst enemy, as this trait to follow led to the eventual demise of Sparta.